They should leave, claiming without evidence that they contribute nothing. Shahed Farah was born and raised in Seattle. He told us he's speaking publicly because others are afraid to.
I definitely am concerned because any community that is targeted feels that any move they make can be taken and flipped upside down and be punished for that. So I definitely worry not for myself, but just the greater community as a whole.
I reached out to several Somali-led organizations, spoke with community members today. Many told me they're scared and frustrated by the president's words. They're collecting their thoughts, and Joyce, they expect a formal response in some sort of press conference, possibly with political officials.
I'll tell you this, you have nothing to fear but fear itself. If you were really that worried, then you should already start packing to return back home. Your community has been caught committing crimes throughout the entire community as a collective. The reason we say this is because there were no Somali whistleblowers that came forth and said, hey, I actually love this country. I love the opportunities. I can come here and work and live and go to school. But some of my people are committing fraud by the tune of billions, and they're sending money back to a terrorist organization that we came here to escape. They're empowering them, taking orders from them, and they believe the laws and the traditions of Somalia are more important than the laws and the traditions of the United States, which is a direct conflict of interest. Nobody came forth and said that. So yes, there is going to be collective punishment. Also, we find out that more than 80% of these people are on welfare. So we're just bringing in more dependents. We can't afford to give our seniors anything. We can't afford to give our homeless vets anything. We can't afford to do, let them tell it, we can't afford to do anything. But we magically have all this money to launder to illegals just because their votes can keep these greedy, disgusting, insidious politicians in power. And we see that in Minnesota. You know, there's no term limits for governor of Minnesota. So technically, Tim Walz, if he sucks enough Somali pipe, he could pretty much be like an emperor for the rest of his life of Minnesota. He could literally bring in his own voter base. Now, when you bring in a voter base from another country and they're low IQ people, and they're also scammers, if you can remove the oversight and allow them to scam the government for billions, you're essentially buying their vote and their loyalty because they control the community. Americans are too, what's the word for an Americans? We're too finicky with our vote. You could be a hardcore Republican, and then all of a sudden, the guy you want to vote for walks out and they notice that the heel on his shoe is a little too big. Now they start saying he wears high heels and you no longer want to vote for the guy. Do you know how unstable that is? You don't know what's really going to happen when you leave the vote up to people. And again, people are finicky. But if you bring in a voter base that is directly loyal to you, well, then you can sleep easy. You don't have to campaign as hard because you already have their vote. And even if you screw up and you say some things that are wrong or you wear some high heels, they're not going to vote against you. They don't care. They're here for the money. They're here for the benefits. They're not here to see the country get better, be healthier, and improve the society. It's every man for themselves. They have their agenda. You have your agenda. And you guys have a common enemy, which is currently Trump and the federal government. So you don't have to worry about their loyalty swaying. And again, that's the issue with democracy, is that true democracy can go in any direction. People could choose to change their vote one day. They could say they're going to vote one way and vote another. You never know. But when you bring in your own pool of voters and the food that goes in their mouth is a direct reflection on if they vote for you or not, 100% of the time they're going to vote for you. It's not going to even be a debate. Now, once they become second and third generation Americans, you have an issue because they're not going to necessarily have to lean on you to feed them as much. And then they're going to change and probably want to vote the other direction. But the fact that they even have a choice at that point, once they're second or third generation in, is a problem. And that's why you have to keep the pipeline of fresh, new illegals coming in. But that requires money. These people don't just come to America for a promise. They come to America for a check. How much is the plane ticket from China to the United States? What about if you're if you're in East Africa? How much is that plane ticket from Somalia to, Ecuador or Colombia, and then you take a trip all the way up to the Mexican border? It's not free. And if these people were making enough money back home where they can afford to do that, then they wouldn't leave. These people are literally paid to come here to be voters. And I'll be honest with you, back when you complied in 2021, they were expecting a lot more of you to be gone by now. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people still dropping every single day. It's just not happening as fast. They were looking to replace these white liberal voters that all went out there and took all them injections. They were looking to replace them with the illegals. This is the interesting thing. I'm doing a show later today. I actually was able to go by Democrat state, and I can tell you which states are focused on which countries to bring illegals from, because each state has a custom template that's specifically for certain people. Like Minnesota has Somalians, Michigan has Arabs, California has Mexicans. Different states have different people. You got people that are from the Balkans that are in Wisconsin. You have people that are from, the far reaches of Eastern Europe. They're in different states. And you go to these states and you look, they specifically pander to a certain group of people because this is the scam. If they bring a bunch of those people over, those are their new voter base. So they don't have to compete for elections. You just got to bring the people over that are going to keep you in power. They literally have certain people that only go to certain states. When the border was open, I used to watch the videos of those independent journalists, and there would be people from different countries. I mean, millions of people. But they were dividing up the people, and they weren't just going to random locations. They were saying, no, Chinese people are going to go here. The Haitians are going to go here. The Koreans are going to go here. It's like they had divided up the country, and they decided which states are going to get which country batch of people. And I would assume they would have liaisons in those states that spoke their language. They put them in houses. They found jobs for them. But yet there's a housing and job crisis for Americans. The thing is, Americans are not your target base anymore because, again, you might accidentally elect another Trump. So they can't leave these elections up to us Americans anymore. They needed illegals who will vote whatever way they say. And they need more. A lot of Americans don't even vote. So that works in their favor. So for every one American that doesn't vote, but you bring in an illegal who has to vote, well, now you're guaranteeing your own victory. And it's working like that. And think about it. Look at Mandami, an open communist socialist of Bengali descent, but he's from like Rwanda. been here since, what, 2018 or something like that, or he grew up in the States. I don't know. The story keeps changing with him. He just won the mayoral election. Now he's saying, I'm going to directly fight law enforcement. Imagine that. You have an elected official in office who will fight law enforcement. But what laws? All laws or just immigration laws? What if you're robbing a bank and the police show up? Can I call 911 and say, hey, there's guys with guns that are outside this bank, and report the police? If I can report ICE, can I call them? It's like they're telling you how to create a lot of confusion, muddies the waters, and you might get lucky and be able to slip away. This level of obstruction, it cannot be allowed. Allowing people who are, even if the voters want somebody that wants to fight against law enforcement, it's up to the Fed to keep that in check. What if the voters said, you know what? There's a guy running for office, but he's a pyromaniac. And he said, look, if I get in, I'm going to burn the whole city down. And what if there's enough radical, and what if that's the Democrat stance at the time? They're like, hey, Trump loves water, so this guy loves fire. He's going to burn down the city if you elect him. So if the people of that city put this guy in power, you think the federal government's just going to say, you know what, we're going to just let our city get burned to the ground, screw it. That's what the people want. They want a pyromaniac. No. Sometimes the federal government it's put in place with its checks and balances because sometimes you have to protect people from themselves. I mean, remember what was it called? The Salem witch trials. They would literally mob rule. They would vote to see if this person's a witch or not. And if everybody voted and said this person is a witch, they burn them. That's the problem with democracy. Sometimes you can't let people decide everything for themselves because they can decide wrong. And then that affects everyone. Some people now, you got to think about it. You're taking advice from people that don't have kids, people that don't have families, people that don't work. Why would you listen to them when they don't even live the same type of lifestyle you live? They don't have the same motivations. They don't have the same responsibilities. They don't care about tomorrow. That's like you taking life advice from someone who's suicidal. That wouldn't make any sense. They're not thinking long term, but you are. And we have to ring that back in. And I know everyone thinks being liberal in America means everything goes. You think these other countries and our enemies don't understand that? I'm watching a video and the guy says, look, the reason I'm in America is because in my countries, everyone's already Muslim. I came here to spread the gospel and to convert people. I didn't stay in my own country because it's an echo chamber over there. I'm over here to conquer and expand my religion. I'm not here because I love the country. I'm not here because I want to be an American. I'm here to make your people want to be like me, join our cause, join our religion, follow our laws in America. And unfortunately, when you're an open society, this is one of the consequences. People can literally study your laws, study your way of life, and they can look for exploits. And there's really nothing you can do about it because they can just call you racist, call you discriminatory, and you have to humor them. It just depends. If you're willing to give up everything in exchange for nothing, then that's your personal decision. But there's other Americans we got to think about. And we're going to need the Fed to protect Americans from themselves because right now we're voting in and selecting the wrong people. But you know what they said when it came to the Mandami election is that the people that voted for them, the people that voted for Mandami, I think it was over 50% of them were not born in New York or in the United States. So what that means is that we have so many, because I was wondering, I was watching these videos and they were like these secret hotels that were packed to the rim with illegals. And there was like all these aggressive security guards outside that didn't want you filming outside on the street. And they were like, well, what's going on in this hotel? Then when you see the election of Mandami, you realize they were just storing voters in there. And they vote illegally, and there's nothing you can do about it because even if they do an audit, they're not going to reverse the decision. So illegals can vote illegally, and there's no consequences. That's what we call an exploit. And it's happening. So it's happening in other parts of the country. That's how these people plan on staying in power. Trump sees this. The administration sees this. The problem is they have a hard time with messaging. They're not speaking to the public and informing them of what I'm telling you right now. So people just think they're being heavy-handed for nothing. They have no idea that we really are at a tipping point. You know what they say? You can vote yourself into communism, but you can't vote your way out. Mandami could be another Tim Walz, just a governor slash, yeah, you're a governor, but you're more like an emperor. You're all-seeing and everybody does what you say because you're the one they're going to keep in power indefinitely because, and don't forget, in some of these states, there's no term limit for some of these positions. The president is every 4 years, and a max you can do is 8 years. Some of these other governors do not have those same term limits. So we have to make better decisions going forward. You know, I'm looking at these people talking about how much they love Somalia and protecting the Somalian community, but they would never go there. They would never vacation there. They won't visit. So they really don't like the Somalians. They don't believe in Somalia. They don't believe in the Somalian people. They're just pawns in a game. But it's mutually beneficial. You get their votes, and then you give them free money. So you guys are just kind of, it's a, I guess fair exchange has never been a robbery, but it's not necessarily fair and it's not equal to the rest of the country. I don't know why these people spend so much time pretending they love these people from this other country, but they would never go to that other country. And when they're deported, they're not proud and happy to go back, but they worship that country while they're here. They wave the flag, they speak the language. Again, they're not here because they want to become Americans. They're here because they want to get rich. They want to get free money. And if that's what you're going to charge for people's votes, at least pay some Americans too. I mean, but then again, an American can take your money and vote the other way. These illegals are going to stay loyal. You know, it's crazy times. You know, people want to keep saying that Trump's such a bad guy, but if these people didn't think their country was garbage, if they didn't think their culture was garbage, they would not leave their country and culture behind. You know, I'm from Los Angeles, loved it. They used to call me Mr. LA. LA became garbage after the lockdown of 2020. I evacuated because it was garbage, and I said it was garbage. I haven't moved back since because it's garbage. It's dangerous, trash everywhere, homeless, Democrats and trans people everywhere now. It's unlivable. And you're just basically waiting for somebody to rob and kill you. That's all you're doing. You're hanging out in LA. You're hoping it doesn't happen to you, but it can and it will. I have friends that were just having lunch in a cafe and somebody just walks up to them in the middle of the day, pulls out a gun, robs them, and just walks away. There's no police, not any that are going to risk their jobs by enforcing laws against anybody of color. They're only pulling over and trying to find crimes that have white people involved. If the person committing a crime isn't white, they leave it alone because you can accuse the cop of being racist and that cop could lose that cushy little $120 a year job. It's just not worth it. So yeah, that's how you know the state is garbage, in my opinion. If these people felt that their country was not garbage, they would live there. And I'll be honest with you. Maybe the United States had too long of a monopoly on immigration. If we stopped immigrants from coming here, if we stopped taking in the best and the brightest from these other countries, maybe they could fix their own countries. But we're siphoning their talent every day. Maybe we shut down the borders, we stop immigration. These people are going to be forced to make their countries great. when they come over here, they have so much criticism. They have so much advice on how we could be better. But that advice, they could apply it to their own country if they were not here. Yes, illegals can vote. And even if Trump was a homosexual, don't you guys like gays? You're a Democrat, right? You love gays. So I don't know why that's not really an insult, because that's a part of your doctrine. To be a Democrat, you have to date trans people, be good with child mutilation, and you have to be also gay. So, I mean, if Trump was one of you, then you should be proud, right? But yes, anybody can vote. If you have an ID, when you show up, matter of fact, I've actually filed a complaint. I went to go vote, but I didn't go in time. My girlfriend showed up and she had my registration to vote and hers. And you know what they said? Nothing. They just took them and said, thank you. She was like, you don't need my ID or his ID. They said, nope. So what do you mean illegals can't vote? Anybody can vote. There are people that literally fly to the United States and vote and leave. Because what safeguards do you believe there are? We had to pay for an independent audit in Maricopa County back in 2020. So who are you expecting to audit and check all these votes and make sure citizens? You guys don't even want citizens. You guys don't even care if non-citizens are getting benefits and free American taxpayer money. We can't even find out from these Democrat states. We can't even get the records to show who's receiving benefits. You think they're going to give you the records on who's voting and who's not? No one's going to do it. That's why they can pull up at 3 a.m. and just dump suitcases full of ballots. Yeah, a year later, they do an investigation and they go to these addresses. No one's ever lived there. All fake voters, fake names, fake everything. But the election's over. It's too late. We don't have we have a bad system right now that's open for fraud. Trump's we're going to get a nationwide ID requirement to vote, which I don't understand why anybody would be against that unless they purposely want fraud to occur. But we're dealing with that right now. People tell me, well, Rico, we can't have IDs to vote because black people are retarded. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, they said black people are too retarded to figure out how to get to the fucking DMV. So then they go out on the street and they interview 50 black people and they say, hey, is it really that hard for you to figure out where the DMV is? And every black person said the same thing. What are you talking about? I have to drive. I have to go to the store. I have to go to the bank. We all have IDs. But when you listen to the elected officials, they tell you black people are mentally inept and they cannot figure out how to get to a DMV. And not only are they dumb, but they are so poor that they don't have the $11 or $12 to pay for an ID because crack addiction, white supremacy, misogyny, and just name any other condition that you want to blame your inadequacies on. And that's how it works. Literally, they said black people cannot figure out how to get to a DMV, so we can't ask for IDs to vote because that would make voting more difficult for black people. Specifically, only black people who they say are at the very bottom. Even the immigrants are like, sí, señor, we can figure out el DMV. You know, they can figure that out, but nobody else can, apparently. So you're wrong about that. Anybody can come over here and vote. People just want to think we live in a perfect world. We need more security. Our security is way too lax and anything goes right now. So if you don't want your country to turn into Somalia, if you don't want your country to turn into Mexico, if you don't want your country to turn into these places that everybody's running away from, we're going to need better security. And we are going to have to stop importing people from these countries who you have to pay them to be here. That's why Trump's suggestion was We're only going to bring people that can afford to pay for a visa, $500,000. And you can come over here and live and work. If you can't afford it, then you can't come over here. We have enough poor people living off the system that are already here. If we're only taking the best and the brightest, if they were the best and the brightest, then they would be able to afford to pay to come here, which would help because we need more elite people. The fact that we're importing hundreds of thousands of people with IQs under 75 from countries where the average person makes $2 a year, it doesn't make any sense. They come here and they get on the system and they qualify for more money than even our poorest Americans. And there's no incentive for them to start working because if they get a job, then their benefits stop. And they didn't come here to work, they came here to scam. And once you start making it hard to scam, then they leave. And that's why we have the Second Amendment. Let somebody try. Yeah, it's going to happen. Yes, that was what people used to call me, actually. People still do. So people don't even know I left California. Have you ever heard of nepotism? I'm not sure where that would apply, but yeah, of course I know what nepotism is. If you're trying to say that about Americans, that we have nepotism because of our parents living here and working and so they can give us a better life, if that's nepotism, then so be it. But if you don't like American nepotism, you are welcome to self-deport to one of these countries where these illegals come from. You could go live there where there's less nepotism and there's less Americans. There's no Trump, there's no ICE. You can just live free and escape the tyranny of oppression in the United States. You don't have to stay here. You're the type to think Haitians are eating pets. I absolutely do. I've actually seen the videos where they talk about eating pets and it's a part of their culture. I knew a bunch of Haitian people when I lived in Florida. It's not abnormal. Now, when they were saying that there were people that were cannibals, those stories I thought were a little exaggerated until you find out that there are gangs of people and the threats of them eating you after they kill you is how you keep people in line. And I'm sure there is a level of cannibalism happening. It's a part of actually the religion over there. It depends on if you know anything about their practices. That is something that does happen. Cannibalism is a thing in some cultures. You might not want to believe it, but people do eat people just like they do eat dogs and cats. That's not a far out theory. That's a lot of people. It's not just Asian people. Again, Haitians, and there are other cultures that eat dogs and cats. They've caught people that own restaurants in the United States that are from other countries, and they would literally trap cats and dogs, and they would fillet them and serve them to their guests. And when they get caught, they shut down, they go open up somewhere else because there's not tons of regulation. There's 300-something million people. That's a lot of people in places to keep track of, especially if you're in a big city. If people are able to scam the government in Minnesota alone, if they're able to scam over $8 billion in only 3 or 4 years, then anything's possible. Do you know how much 1 billion is? Okay, times that by 8. Then that means that there is no oversight. There's anything goes. Now, I've seen a lot of Americans that have been getting rounded up for PPP fraud. But the difference is when it comes to illegals is you don't know who they are. They can come over here to this country. One thing they do is before they cross the border, they dump their identification where they're from. So there's no records of them in the system here. So everything's new. So they could be one name today. They could be another name next week and another name next month. There's no fingerprints on file. There's no birth certificate. They weren't born here. They don't have a social security number because they never received social security. So the government gives them a temporary CPN number, and that's how they use that to kind of function with their temporary visa. And even after their visa expired, again, there's millions of people here. It's really hard to track down these people and find them. The only time you really get deported is when you're trying to travel in and out of the country, or if you're arrested for committing a crime. But if you just lay low and keep your head down, then you can kind of just sneak around the United States indefinitely, even with warrants. Again, they don't know who you really are. So you can use one identity in one state, and you could be a whole new person in another state. And they're not really going to be able to connect you unless you have fingerprints on file from committing multiple crimes. Then they're able to pinpoint you. But if you stay above board, keep your head down, then no one knows. You know, we don't live, the surveillance state is building, but it's not all the way there. You can kind of just get away. There are some people that are on the run for 30, 40 years. And the FBI and everybody's looking for them. They can't find them. Still alive. Some of them still in the same country. So anything's possible. It might sound like that to you, but that's just because you've never looked into any of these topics. But you're more than welcome to fact check me and then come back, and I'm happy to go over whatever you find. But, you know, I used to think like you too. I thought everything was more secure than it actually was. I believed there was oversight. I believed that, you know, if somebody used the wrong information, no, there's no one there to check. No one cares. You know, there's a lot of crime here, and these are, you know, white collar crime is different than, you know, violent crimes. And again, billions of dollars going to illegals in multiple states. We're talking about Minnesota, but we're not talking about Maine. The governor of Maine is begging for Trump to send in the feds to do audits so they can find out which illegals are stealing this money so they can go arrest them, because they don't have the resources to do it. You got Arizona also. And then don't get me started on California and New York, or in, Texas. The whole country's being defrauded. Trump, we need Trump for about 2 more terms. I know he's in his 80s now, but I mean, if we don't keep this going, then it'll all be for nothing. You know, we have a leak in the boat, and just throwing water out is not going to help. We have to find the leak and seal it. Just using buckets to throw the water out that's coming in is not going to help. The ship's going to still go down. Anyway, I'll be back on in about 20 minutes with another topic. I just wanted to bring up this whole Somali stuff. These people keep saying all this crazy nonsense, and we're tired of hearing it.
South Seattle, Tukwila, and SeaTac is home to one of the largest Somali communities on the West Coast. Tonight, leaders in that community say the president's comments are not only painful, but potentially dangerous. For Somali Americans living in Washington state, the words from the White House were hard to hear. Donald Trump referred to Somali immigrants living in the U.S. as garbage and suggested they should leave, claiming without evidence that they contribute nothing.
Well, I mean, what do you mean without evidence? The evidence is clear because they're all signed up for welfare. Over 80% are receiving benefits, housing, food, Medicaid in the form of cash payments every month. So that means they're not working. So they're not contributing to the system. So what do you mean there's no evidence? That is the evidence, is that they're on government assistance. That's the evidence. But also we're finding out that these Somalians are in multiple states. Now, this guy, this is from Washington state. Everyone's just been focused on Minnesota. But now you got whistleblowers in Ohio, Maine. There's all these different states, and they're saying, hey, they've hit us here for billions too. And we need more ICE. We need more people signing up to work for the government. We're going to need more agents. Maybe all those extra IRS agents, they can reassign them to go try to find out where this money's going. And whoever owns those accounts, lock the accounts, take the money back, and arrest the people that own it. But again, you don't know their true identity. You can open up a bank account with a fake social, that's a temporary social that was given to somebody with a temporary visa. And that person could have never even went into the bank. They could have opened it online. So you don't even know who the account belongs to. That's what I'm always wondering. Like, what do you mean there's dead people in the rolls or dead people receiving benefits? So then who are the funds going to? And it's going to an account in the dead person's name, but it's not the dead person, obviously, who's going and having access to it. So there's a lot of things we got to figure out. It's not going to be done overnight. The good thing is this, we're only 10 months into Trump's presidency, so we have a lot more to look forward to. We have to keep fighting a good fight. Well, look, I'll be back on in about 20 minutes with another topic. I just got my mic and everything fixed. So remember, America first, America only.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.